Some questions are not meant to be answered quickly. Part 1. Let me ask you something, gently. Have you ever noticed how the same memory keeps coming back at night? Not the big events, not the things people talk about, but that one moment, that one sentence you wish you could take back, that decision you wish you had made differently. And somehow, even though it's already over, your body still reacts as if it's happening again. Your chest tightens, your breath becomes shallow, your mind whispers, quietly, "Why did I do that?" Now here is something I want you to consider, very carefully. You are not suffering because of what you did. You are suffering because you won't stop replaying it. Again and again and again. I know this because I have seen it in so many people. And if I am honest, I have seen it in myself too. We don't just remember the past, we reopen it. We step back into it, as if we could change it by thinking about it one more time. But what if? The pain you feel right now has nothing to do with the past at all. What if it is something else, something much closer happening in this very moment? I will leave you with that question, for now. Part 2. Mirror maybe. It wasn't something big, not a life-changing mistake, not something the whole world saw. Maybe it was just a sentence, something you said a little too quickly, a tone that came out wrong, or a decision. One of those quiet decisions that didn't seem important at the time, but later you realized it changed something. Or maybe it was simply a moment where you wish you had been more patient, more kind, more aware. Let me ask you honestly, have you ever gone back to that moment again and again? Not just remembering it, but reliving it? You see it clearly. You hear the words again. You feel the same emotion rising in your body. Your chest tightens, your jaw locks, your breath becomes shallow. And then, the mind speaks. Softly, almost like a whisper. Why did I do that? And here is something very subtle that most people never notice. It feels like the past is hurting you. But if you look closely, what you are feeling right now is not the past. It is the reaction happening inside your body in this moment. In psychology, we know this well. The brain does not clearly separate memory from reality. If the image is vivid enough, the body responds as if it is real. So even though the event happened only once, your body is experiencing it again, and again, and again. And this is where the real suffering begins, not in the moment itself, but in the repetition. The mind goes back, trying to fix something that cannot be changed, trying to rewrite something that is already complete. But notice this very carefully. The event happened once, but the suffering? You are creating it over and over again. I wonder, what happens if you simply see that clearly? Part 3. Reveal now. Let's slow down for a moment, because what I'm about to share may change the way you see your past. There are 2 very different kinds of regret. They may feel similar at first, they may even sound the same inside your mind, but they lead your life in completely different directions. The first kind of regret is quiet. It does not shout, it does not attack you. It simply says, I understand what happened, and next time I will be wiser. There's no tension in it, no tightness in the chest, no heaviness in the heart, just clarity. A gentle seeing, a learning, and then a natural letting go. But the second kind feels very different. You can feel it in your body immediately. It says, I should not have been that person. I was wrong. Something is wrong with me. And suddenly, the mistake is no longer just something you did. It becomes who you are. One kind of regret brings light. The other slowly closes the door. One opens the future. The other traps you in the past. But here is the difficulty. Most people never learn to tell the difference. They believe all regret is the same. So they carry everything. They hold on to every memory, thinking that by holding it tighter, they are being responsible, being moral, being a better person. But in reality, they are only hurting themselves. Now, this is not a new discovery. Long before modern psychology, this was deeply understood. In ancient teachings, they spoke about this confusion very clearly, that not all regret is the same. Some regret leads to wisdom. It helps you see clearly, it softens you, it makes you more human. But some regret becomes a prison. It does not teach, it does not guide, it only repeats. And if you are not careful, you can spend years living inside that prison without even realizing it. So maybe the question is not, why do I feel regret? But rather, what kind of regret am I holding right now? I invite you to sit with that. Part 4. Story. Let me share with you a simple story. Not a dramatic one, not something you would see in the news, just something very human. A man once spoke to his father, a little too harshly. There was no big argument, no shouting, just a few words spoken in the wrong tone. He was tired. You know how it is. After a long day, when the body is exhausted and the mind is not as gentle as it should be. His father said something small, something ordinary, and he replied, a little too quickly, a little too sharply, and right after, there was a moment of silence. The kind of silence where you feel something was not right. But he told himself, it's okay. I'll fix it later. I'll apologize tomorrow. We all say that sometimes, don't we? Tomorrow. But the next day his father passed away. And just like that, there was no tomorrow. For years, he went back to that moment. Not once in a while, palliative, not just on special days, but again and again and again. He replayed the tone, the exact words, the look on his father's face. He tried to remember every detail, as if somehow if he looked closely enough, he could change it. But he couldn't. And slowly, something began to change inside him. He was no longer remembering. He was punishing himself. Every time the memory came back, his body tightened, his chest felt heavy, his breath became shallow. And the same sentence echoed inside his mind. I should have been better. I should not have said that. Years passed, but the moment never left. Not because it was still happening, but because he kept bringing it back. Now let me ask you very gently, is there a moment like that in your life? Something small, but it stayed. Something you wish you could go back and change, just once. I want you to hold that for a moment. Because what we are about to see next may change the way you carry it. Part 5. Metaphor. One evening, after many years of carrying that memory, the man stepped outside. It was quiet, the kind of quiet you don't often notice anymore. And he looked up at the sky. But the moon was gone, covered by thick, heavy clouds. For a brief moment, it felt as if the light had disappeared, as if something essential was missing. And standing there, he felt something very familiar. That same heaviness, that same sense of loss, as if something inside him had been damaged long ago. But then something shifted, not suddenly, not dramatically, just a quiet realization. The moon was never gone. It was never broken, never damaged. It was only hidden. And in that moment, something became very clear to him. All these years he had been looking at the clouds and thinking that was the truth. He believed the darkness was permanent. But it wasn't. It was just something passing. And maybe this is something you need to hear today. Your mistake is the cloud, not your nature, not your worth, not who you are. What you did was a moment. But what you are is something much deeper, something that cannot be reduced to a single action. And here's the part that many people struggle to accept. No amount of thinking, no amount of replaying, no amount of going back again and again in your mind will ever clear the sky. Because thinking is just more clouds. You don't remove clouds by chasing them. You don't find the moon by fighting the darkness. You simply stop looking in the wrong place. So maybe the question is not, how do I fix the past? But, what am I mistaking for myself right now? I invite you to sit with that. Part 6. Shift. So what do you do with all of this? If the mind keeps going back, if the memory keeps returning, if the feeling still comes, what do you actually do? Most people try to fight it. They try to push the thought away, they try to distract themselves, or they try to think their way out of it. But as you may have noticed, that doesn't really work. The more you fight the thought, the stronger it returns. So instead, you do something very different, something much simpler. Next time the memory appears, and it will, pause, just pause. Don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to explain it. Don't rush to escape it. Just stay. And gently bring your attention to your body. Notice your chest. Is it tight? Notice your jaw. Is it holding tension? Notice your breath. Is it shallow or soft? You are not trying to change anything. You are only noticing. And then, very quietly, say this to yourself. This is not the past. This is a thought happening now. You see, the mind creates an image, the body reacts, and together they create the feeling of reliving. But if you can see it clearly, something begins to shift. You are no longer inside the memory. You are the one who is aware of it. And in that moment, even if nothing else changes, even if the memory is still there, you are no longer trapped. Because you are no longer lost in it, you are here, breathing, feeling, aware. This is what awareness does. It does not erase the past. It simply brings you back to where life is actually happening. And maybe for the first time in a long while, you are not living in yesterday. You are awake. I wonder, can you feel that right now? Part 7. Resolution. And now something very quiet begins to appear. Not a big realization, not something dramatic, just a soft understanding. The past is not holding you, it never did. What holds you is the way you keep resisting it, the way you keep saying this should not have happened, I should have been different, and every time that resistance appears, the past feels closer, heavier, more real. But when you stop, just for a moment, something changes. You begin to see the memory is only a movement of the mind. It comes, it stays for a while, and then it fades, just like a cloud. The mind will bring clouds. That's what it does. It remembers, it compares, it replays. This is not a problem. This is simply the nature of the mind. But what creates the struggle is not the cloud. It is the belief that the sky should be clear. And maybe you have been trying for a long time to clear the sky, to fix every thought, to resolve every memory, to make everything feel right. But what if peace was never about that? What if peace is simply the willingness to let the clouds be there without following them? You don't have to chase them away. You don't have to argue with them. You don't even have to understand them. You only need to remember something very simple. The moon is still there, even when you cannot see it. Even when the sky feels dark, even when the mind feels heavy, nothing essential has been lost. So maybe the next time the memory returns, you don't need to fix it. You just need to look up and remember what has always been there. I will leave you with that. Part 8. Silent ending. There is nothing you need to solve right now, nothing you need to fix. You have spent so many years trying to understand your past, trying to correct it, trying to make peace with it by thinking about it again and again. But maybe peace was never found that way. Maybe peace was always here, not in changing what happened, but in seeing what is here now. The breath, moving quietly, the body, softening, even just a little, the awareness that has been here all along. We do not clear the sky, we learn to see beyond the clouds. And when you begin to see that, even for a moment, something inside you becomes very still, very open, very free. Take a gentle breath, and if you can, carry this with you into the rest of your day. Just this simple knowing, the sky was never broken. It was only covered. I'll leave you here, in that quiet,